Good evening, everyone. My name is Carolina Ramirez. My pronouns are she, her, and hers.
My name is Maxina Prado. My pronouns are he, him, his.
And as co-chairs of the Student Government Association's Political Action Committee, we would like to welcome you to another one of our Meet the Candidate series. So just a little bit about us. If you're new, PAC is a student-led organization whose mission is to bring political awareness on campus in a nonpartisan manner through fun and informative events.
As a university, we believe in the free and open exchange of ideas. However, we will also do so in a way that builds community. Appropriate and respectful decorum is essential to any democratic exchange of ideas. This is not a place for individuals to engage in political spectacle.
All right, so today we're going to introduce y'all to one of the candidates who's going to be on the ballot for the runoff election for the City of Laredo mayor position. The purpose of this educational forum is to introduce TAMU students in the Laredo community to the candidate, their ideas, the platform, and their ideas on how to better the City of Laredo. So lastly, we would like to state that we are a nonpartisan organization, so that means we won't be endorsing or affiliating with any candidates or political ideologies. And we would also like to inform the audience that the candidate was not aware of any of the following questions or topics beforehand.
At this time, I'd like to formally introduce you to our mayoral candidate, Dr. Treviño. And to start off this interview, could you please tell us something about your background, past professions, past achievements, something you want to tell the public about?
Sure, and thank you for this interview. My name is Dr. Victor Treviño, candidate for Mayor Laredo, like you said. Born and raised in Laredo, and product of the public schools. Went to LC, graduated from Nixon High School. First attended Martin High School when there was no Nixon High Schools. So then we went on to Nixon after they built it. Then went on to Laredo College, which was Laredo Junior College back then. And after that, went to Kingsville, Texas, Texas A&I University, which is now Texas A&M University. After that, proceeded to do my medical school in Torreon, Mexico. After finishing that, went on to do a residency training, specialty in family and community medicine in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was there for 4 years. And between the residency, I also had a job with the Louisiana Department of Corrections, with being the expert medical witness for that department. I proceeded to obtain a license in Louisiana during that time. It's a medical license and a medical license in the state of Alabama. Then came back to Laredo and I also practice in emergency rooms around the state of Texas in Laughlin Air Force Base, Mission, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, and eventually opened a private practice here in Laredo. Have 2 medical clinics locally, and I have been with the health department, the city of Laredo, for over 36 years until this year, where I retired from the health department. I was the former health authority for the city of Laredo during the pandemic, where we had all the unfortunate illnesses from COVID. During that time and before that time, instilled some medical clinics at the health department for underserved and underinsured people that had no access to medical care. And these clinics were instrumental in keeping people out of the hospital that could be treated as outpatients and have medical access to prevention of illnesses. These clinics are still in existence, and I think more of these clinics could have been made, and we're going to strive for that. After that, I have been practicing for over 36 years in my clinics. Have been the chief of staff for Laredo Medical Center, chief of medical staff. Have been the chief of family practice department at Laredo Medical Center and chief of family practice at Doctors Hospital. Medical director for a nursing home and for several home healths here in Laredo. Also advocate for international collaboration and co-author of Proyecto Ciudad Salud, trying to establish a coordination between the doctors from Mexico and doctors from the United States, and standardizing of medicine. After that time, I've been practicing private practice, and had been during that time also being a doctor that delivered babies. When I started here in Laredo, we had very few OBGYNs, so doctors that had training in obstetrics, and myself were able to be a part of the obstetric department. From the time since 1985 to this year, delivered thousands of babies, up to approximately 8,000 to 10,000 babies, and have continued to see some of these babies that grew up within my practice, and the mothers already got pregnant. The babies that were born already got pregnant and had babies again, and I was able to deliver babies of the babies. So as of this year, I stopped doing obstetrics, but I have continued doing my medical practice up to now. And that is partially part of my background. I am married for about 50 years, had 5 children, all adults, and have grandchildren. So as part of Laredoan and have my family here, a descendant 10th generation of Tomas Sanchez. So this is one of the reasons why also I have opted to run for the candidacy of mayor.
All right, so you happen to have a lot of accomplishments and past professions. How does the coursework relate to the career that you're aiming for right now, and why should we elect you as opposed to your other opponent based on that?
First of all, I have deep roots here in Laredo, and it is one of the things that is my vision to make Laredo better than what we started with. Another thing is that I'm a public servant and have been a public servant. I'm not a politician. And public service that was given through the health department and all the establishment of the medical clinics is something I think that politicians need to do. They have to be public servants before they become politicians. And this is something I would like to do here in the city of Laredo, because the city has, I think, lost confidence in the local government. And there's a lot of things that need to be changed, and people are already starting to voice that. And this is a time where I think it would be beneficial to run for that position. And basically because the position of mayor is the person that gets elected. The position of a mayor is about the person, the visions, the transparency, the honesty, and the information to the public. And this way we can make the public more informed and be involved, so they can be involved in the decision making of ordinances and to what direction the city is going into.
Alrighty. So if elected, it's a two-part question, right? If elected, what will be your top priority long-term projects? And then the second question would be, what will be your top priority short-term projects?
The very first thing that needs to be established is public trust and confidence. And we do this by information, transparency, and informing the people of what are the challenges, because there are several challenges that are important. A lot of them have priorities, but the most important thing is the water issue. The water issue is crucial and very important. Everybody has been talking about it. So that's one of the major challenges. Other challenges that are also important is public health, medical underservice, public education and private education, binational relationships, affordable housing, infrastructure. And looking into the infrastructure, we have to realize that we have a fund in the city that's called the Capital Improvement Fund. This fund is established to refurbish or to improve the already established infrastructure. So we have to tap into that, and we also have to look into other resources, federal and state resources that have not really been explored that much, so we can get other ways to finance our deficiencies. It is very difficult for a city to be the most important land port in the United States, which we are, and to be able to be up to par with all the other cities, or even better, because we represent an area that's very important. This is where 17,000 trailers pass every day. And according to a bank, the amount of merchandise that travels on a daily basis is up to $1 billion of merchandise going back and forth. So with that in mind, it behooves us to have our infrastructure and all our challenges met in a priority sort of way. But the most important thing, I think, at this point is the water issue.
All right, and so given that this is a student-led organization, we are trying to cater to our students, right? How will you work towards Time U students, and why should college students elect you?
College students have to be involved in what happens in their city, even though they're young adults and they might think that it's not too important to be involved. It is very important because they are the future, and whatever happens now will be established, and that'll be whatever is available for them in the future. If the infrastructure and all the challenges that are deficient in right now are not fixed by the time they're working adults, this will impact them. So it is important for students to get involved at this point, especially students that can already vote.
And do you have any plans to improve the quality of life for young adults in Laredo?
First thing to do is to establish an activity of smaller businesses, small business. Not to cater only to small business, but small business is where the activity happens. The more small businesses, the more activity in Laredo, the more commerce, and that improves the quality of life. So people that are leaving Laredo because there's nothing to do might be related because of the lack of activity and lack of smaller businesses. So I think the city has an interest in that, and the city has to attract smaller businesses to improve the activity, and this indirectly will affect the quality of life. So this will affect the quality of life for younger people also.
With that being said, it is, as you mentioned, it's important to keep those small businesses here in Laredo. How you ensure that the small businesses, once they get here, they stay active and actually stay in the city?
The city has to provide incentives. There's many cities that want small business to come in, but if you are a small business and look to apply to different cities and the best incentives are given to you in a certain place, you automatically, it's logical you're going to the best area where you would have the better incentives. And one of those incentives will be availability of getting the permits in a way that will be effective of your time. The time is very important, because if you petition for your permit and it's going to take several months, well, that's not an incentive. The other thing is certain tax incentives can also be given to small businesses, and the infrastructure of the city has to be ready and available so smaller businesses can be attracted. If the infrastructure is bad, the water quality is bad, small businesses will not likely come here. They will go to other places.
Okay. As the former Laredo Health Authority, you have mentioned, and you mentioned right now previously, that medically underserved community. If elected as our mayor, what plans do you have to improve the healthcare for our Laredoans?
There are several reasons for Laredo being medically underserved, and this has been happening through decades. And one of the things is that we have very few medical personnel, including doctors. We have a third of the doctors that need to be here. And least of all, primary care doctors is even a less amount. I think during the pandemic, only a handful of doctors handled the pandemic. So that's very, very concerning, because if we have another pandemic, we might be in worse trouble. Now, one of the things is keeping the nursing personnel and medical personnel that man the hospital, because if there's no people to man the hospital, we cannot open more rooms. And we can not open more rooms, we can't open intensive care units for pediatrics. We cannot expand the hospital. We cannot offer any services to new doctors wanting to come in because the doctor's going to want those services to be available. If they're not here, that does not attract doctors. And the nursing personnel has to know that the salaries are competitive here. If the salaries are not competitive, they're going to go elsewhere. And also the third thing would be the quality of life. Even though the salary is good, they also want a good quality of life. They want to go to a place where there's things to do, especially young people. And if the quality of life is not there because of the infrastructure or lack of activity through smaller businesses, that will not be attractive for people wanting to come to Laredo. So all those things are important.
All right. As mentioned, as I've been noticing in the past couple of years, it's an ongoing problem where city managers get hired and then they don't complete the contract. Or you need to address this issue where city managers leave. By how will you ensure, in other words, the city managers stay here in Laredo once they're hired?
There is an agency, a consulting agency that the city has contracted with to look at all the candidates that would be the right fit for Laredo. And it depends on their qualifications, their experience, and the ability to fit into our culture. Spanish would be a good access to have. It would be a good thing for them to have. So all these things that the consulting agency will give us the leading candidates, and then from there the city council will decide. But it is very important that we need to realize that the city is a city manager run city. And the city manager is in charge, is a CFO for the finances. He or she is involved of the finances and where the money is allocated to. So the city council should not interfere with the city manager's decisions. They are able to converse with him or her in regards to the proceedings, but to interfere or to influence the city manager, it would not be what the city charter or the spirit of the city charter is meant to do. So I have said it publicly that the city manager should be let to do his job and not interfere. So one of the things that has happened, all the city managers that have come and gone have been in part because they have been influenced by the city council, or they have not been able to do their job as they need to do it. So one of the things I would stress on saying is that we should not let the city council influence the city manager and let him do his job.
Well, a bit of a follow-up question to this issue with city managers. It's also a known issue that there's a toxic workplace problem here going on in the city of Laredo, not only city council, but overall. Do you have an action plan to address this issue? If so, what is it?
There's been certain problems, and they have been voiced publicly by some employees. I think everything starts from the top. If there is decency, there's fairness, and there's transparency, and everything comes from the top. So the head of the city is the mayor. If the mayor instills this confidence and this way of thinking, it trickles down to all the employees. And it's very important for the human resources persons or supervisor to be on board with this, because we cannot have people being hired just because they're friends of somebody or just because they owe them a favor. That's not the way things should work. They should be hired on merit, on qualifications, and with the spirit of doing the right thing and working in the right direction. So those things need to be instilled, and it is the voice of the mayor that represents the public, that the public needs people like that in their city government to avoid the toxicity.
Right, and so there's a lot of things that you mentioned that go into this, and as the top, as the mayor, how would you attempt to create this transparency that you want as an elected official?
Information and public addresses, state of the city addresses. should be made by the mayor to the city every month or so. The mayor needs to come out in public access TV and inform the city what the budget is, what the expenses are, what projects are being done, what the progress is, so people will know where their taxes are going. And if there is to be a tax raise, the mayor needs to inform the city. We have to increase the taxes because of this, of whatever situation, and explain the budget to the city. We have X amount of dollars, we have these projects, and the reason we need to increase taxes is for this, and these taxes are specifically going to certain projects. And he would show what's going on. And the city would be, I think, a little bit more at ease and more comfortable if they know where the tax dollars are going. Now, there's people that sometimes cannot buy their medication, especially elderly, because they have to pay their water bill or they have to pay X things. So the city can create a certain program or a way to alleviate the stresses of these, especially elderly people. There's a lot of projects that can be talked about and created. So these are ideas that I do have.
Mm-hmm. And on that same topic, the binational park is actually a topic that's pretty controversial when it comes to taxpayers' money. What's your take on this, and what's your take on our relationship with our sister city, Laredo?
Well, number one, all parks are a good idea. They're good things, they're good projects. But we have to establish priorities. What are the priorities here in Laredo? Water is priority. Quality of life is priority. Access to medical care. A lot of things are priority. A public binational park is nice, but people are asking who's going to pay for it, how much it's going to cost. So as it is, we're struggling to fix our water pipes, and we're looking at this as a major challenge. A binational park, like I say, might be a good idea, but it maybe would be identified as a water conservation project. That would be better. And we have other things that need to be prioritized first, but these are things still to be discussed. That's why we need a city manager to inform us what the state of the finances are and who is going to take or foot the bill for what. So these are things that need to be considered, but just to say I am or against the binational park, it's not a yes or no answer. It has to do with when and how and what's first.
Okay. With that being said, just touching that topic of water, and also then you mentioned in your long-term goals, there's an ongoing water issue here in the state of Laredo in the past couple of years. If elected, what will be like your main priorities to address this issue?
First thing, we have to look at the water project, that the major plan that the city has. This plan delineates all the water pipes in Laredo that have to be fixed, how much it will cost, and what areas need to be started on first. That water master plan has not been given to anybody. The city has it, and nobody knows what it is yet. So first we have to look at it. We have to discuss it with the public and say, this is the water master plan. This is what it's going to cost. And just tell them the truth. If it's a truth that's very uncomfortable, it still has to be said. And if it's an astronomical number, we have to find out what other sources we can tap into or what other agencies, either state or federal, that could help us with it. But the people have to know first how much is it going to cost and how we're going to pay for it. That's number one. Number two is going to be the long-term plan on the water. Getting back to the short term, we have to inform the public that we cannot be wasting water. We have to water at night. We have to water on certain days. We should not be wasting water on things that water is more important to the homesteads. A city without water is a city that doesn't function. So we have to involve the public in conserving water. The long-term plan is to find out where we're going to be in 18 to 20 years, because we know that the city will grow in a way that the river water will not be sufficient. So we're going to have to start planning from now and not wait 20 years and be with another water crisis, which we are in right now. In 18 years, we'll find out that the river would not be enough. So we have to look and be starting to get plans for water conservation and areas of water storage. We can do some water storage in tanks or other methods, and have the ability to get water from other areas, either brought in or piped in or aquifers, other things, but they have to be planned on now and not in 20 years when the crisis is here again.
All right, so another issue that's also at risk is the housing insecurity issue. So Laredo has been going through housing insecurity, especially after the pandemic. So what is your plan to combat this and make housing more affordable and accessible to all Laredoans from north to south?
That is a plan that is involved, but it can be done. We have to bring builders to the table, the home builders, and have conversations with them in regards to making a plan to also create affordable housing. So these are things that arrangements can be made with them. So affordable housing will be available to people that are living in substandard houses and slum areas. We know that if you bring people up out of those deteriorated areas, the level of crime decreases, the ability of young people to get better education increases, so overall our city gets stronger. So that is very important, and those discussions have to be brought with the home builders, and certain agreements would have to be made.
Alrighty. As a border town, we do have a relationship with our sister city, Nuevo Laredo, as Clara mentioned earlier. If let's say major, what kind of relationship would you want to have with our sister city, Nuevo Laredo?
Yes, you did mention something about sister city, and I didn't address it, but it is very important for a city to consider ourselves a community with Nuevo Laredo. We're two different cities, but we're one community, and we saw this during the pandemic. Whatever happens to one side happens to the other side. Even though we're two different nations and two different cities, but the culture and the people are the same. We go back and forth with commerce, with families, with everything. We're intertwined and have been intertwined for decades, if not centuries. So it is very important to have a very good, strong binational relationship with our sister city. And especially because we're a border city, we're the largest land ports for them also and for us. So it behooves us to get strong security, strong availability of resources, and to bring the level of the city, of the quality of life up. And this has to be coordinated with our sister city, because we might have some issues, they have different issues, but at the end of the day, it becomes an issue for the whole community.
All right, and do you have any plans on creating any community shelters or community programs?
Those are also very important, because we need to address the issue of the homeless population. And that is something that has to be addressed in a way that it would be to a point of humane, if you could call it like this. People are people, and even though they're homeless and they have nowhere to stay and their medical demands are very high, we have to treat our most vulnerable in a good way, because society is measured by how they treat their most vulnerable. So that is a very important point.
Okay. Before we get finishing up, what makes you stand out compared to your opponent?
I think the first thing is that my aspirations are not political. My aspirations are to fix the problem that exists and to be transparent. As a doctor, we're held to the highest standards. We're responsible for the patient. We're responsible for lives, life and death, and we are responsible for the lives of those people. So that is the utmost responsibility. And I think when we treat a patient, even though they're very sick, we can do everything we can, and we do everything we can to save that life. So the city would be more or less the same. You're providing service to the people you're you're trying to better their situation, trying to better the whole outcome of the city. So I think it more or less is similar to treating a patient, because we are the captain of the ship when it comes to treating a patient. We're the captain. We call the shots and we say what orders will be done. And we order our treatment and medication for the betterment of that patient. It'll be more or less the same for the city.
There, as mentioned previously, there's an issue with small businesses bringing life to Laredo, social life especially. With that being said, what will you do to bring life back to Laredo, especially in a social setting, including the south and downtown Laredo, where people usually go to, and not only like those two areas, but like all over the city of Laredo, so that way people don't have to travel to like from one side of the city to travel to the other side of the city to like for that social setting. It's also like yeah. I'm sure that makes sense.
Yes, I think I understand your question. It is of the utmost important that we look at improving downtown. We cannot let downtown stay as it is or become a slum, because that will attract crime, drug cartels, and deterioration of everything. And we can't let it go like that, because eventually downtown could contaminate the rest of the city. Contaminate in a way that it'll propagate to the point that Laredo will become like downtown if we don't do anything about it. So what we have to do is focus on downtown, get the infrastructure fixed to where the city is available to do it, the streets, the sidewalks, and the cleanliness, and the homeless people need to be placed in certain areas or be directed to a certain area. We could attract business downtown, small business, by giving incentives and providing areas where they would like to establish a business downtown. It doesn't have to be the clothing stores that were there before. It could be any type of business. It could be machinery or merchandise that is sought by international travelers from Mexico. So downtown has a chance to revitalize, but the city has to put the infrastructure point of view first.
All right, and there's always seemed to be like a somewhat of a divide between the districts of Laredo. How would you promote and create a community within all of Laredo, every single district, make sure that everyone is working together for the same goals?
It starts with the vision and the way of thinking. We're not a city of districts. Each district is not a little tribe. Each district is part of the city, so we have to think as a city, because we cannot allow one district to be thriving and the other district not. In regards to the city giving its attention to, we have to look at all the districts as part of the city, and we have to give that message to all the councilmen and all the city council and all the city. And the mayor is a mayor for all the city, not the mayor for one district or the best district, and not the underprivileged district. The mayor's the mayor for everybody. So with that in mind, if we keep on giving that message, we are one city, and we're strong together, and divided, we are not that strong.
If elected, there will be certain changes going on in the city. So what would your vision be of Laredo from like 5 years from now, 6 years from now, like in the future, if you were to be elected?
I think Laredo has the opportunity to be one of the best cities in the country, because we have the strategic place we can be. We're the largest land port. There's $1 billion of merchandise that go back and forth. No Laredo is the same. So both cities are able to be exemplary cities for the whole Americas, I think. But we have to work strong at it, and we have to be convinced that we have that ability. Laredo people have to feel proud that they're Laredoans, and only in Laredo has to stand for something good. Because I think we do certain things in Laredo that nowhere else are being done. That is something that has to be promoted, and I think by promoting a sense of pride, people will feel good about doing what they're doing and will work hard at getting Laredo into a better place.
With that being said, that concludes our questions for this interview. Dr. Treviño, do you have any closing statements before we conclude this interview?
Just want to mention to the people that they need to vote. They need to exercise their right to vote for whatever candidate they think is the best one. But they cannot say, I won't vote because nothing changes, or why vote if I'm not involved, I don't know anything about the city. We have to promote that voting right to be exercised, or else nothing will change.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Treviño, for being with us here today. And before we finish up, we have some important announcements for the audience.
So for anyone who's not aware, there's one election going right around the corner in roughly around 2 weeks from now. As in Laredo announced, early voting will take place starting November 30th all the way to December 13th, and the election day for runoffs will be December 17th. We encourage everyone who's eligible to vote to go out and vote in the runoff elections, as local elections are the most important kind of elections, especially as it affects us on a daily basis. And especially considering that there's a lack of voters in runoff elections and also in non-presidential election years.
Yeah, so with that being said, if you have any questions regarding the voting process, we're always happy to help, and you can contact us through our Facebook or Instagram at txmu.sga.pac, or you can send us an email at tamu.political.action@gmail.com.
We hope to see everyone in the polls, and with that being said, dust them.